Today on Storybound, we are here with Dana Gricken. Is Gricken how you say it?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. She has been so kind to come onto the podcast and talk a little bit about her creative journey. She is a writer, and I'm very excited to talk with Dana today. So, Dana, can you tell a little bit to the listeners about who you are?
Yeah, I am a prolific author from Ottawa, Canada. I've written books in just about every genre. I really do like hopping between genres from fantasy to horror. And I have had anxiety and depression since I was a little kid.
Okay. And I did take a look at that. I saw that you have right now 9 books out, like book deal.
Yes. Yeah,
And
and I
I
signed another book deal this morning. So,
Oh my goodness, congratulations. So that makes 10.
yes,
That's a big deal.
it is. It's a lot. I'm like, just breathe in, breathe out. We can handle it.
But I wanted to ask a little bit about the fantasy horror thing because when I was looking at all your books, it looked like you were also jumping between not even just genre, but like you have some like YA books. Are you primarily writing YA or are you writing YA and adult?
I'm writing both. Yeah, just whatever comes to my mind. If I think it's a good idea, I'm going to write it. That's really my philosophy.
Okay, the one I was going through all of them, and the one that really interests me is the one titled Modern Fairy Tale. That sounds like something right up my alley.
Yes, and I just finished the edits on that with my editors, so hopefully we'll get a release date soon and that can come out soon.
Awesome, awesome. So I would love to dive in more to you said, you were earlier you shared that you were also late diagnosed like myself. And I would love to jump into a little bit more about like what it has been like doing all of this because obviously you are incredibly prolific. You are doing a lot. And so that is not easy to manage when you are also managing, depression or anxiety or anything along those lines. So what has that been like for you?
Sometimes it's a challenge. Like there's some days I get up and my anxiety and my depression is just really weighing me down. And I tell myself you have to keep going, keep moving forward. It's difficult, but you can handle this.
Do you have any particular like habits or anything like that? I know for me, one of the habits that I have is that I kind of force myself to get up and go for a walk the very first thing in the morning for like 20 or 30 minutes. Do you have any sort of like rituals like that or habits that you like push yourself to do when you're feeling that kind of hitting you and coming on in order to kind of like bounce back?
Yeah, it's the same thing. I'll go for a walk or I'll sit down, watch my favorite TV show, something that's comforting, something that's going to help get me through that episode so I can get to the end of it and then get to writing.
And what are some of the biggest challenges overall that you feel like managing, depression, anxiety? What are the biggest challenges you think for you affecting your creative journey?
And some days, you just feel tired or you're having panic
Yeah.
attacks. It's hard to find the motivation to sit down and kind of push that all out of your head. So sometimes it's hard to start projects because I'm like, I don't know if I can finish it. I'm kind of in a bad place right now. So that's a challenge starting things for me.
I agree. I agree with that so much. It happened to me just last night. I like really wanted to sit down and work on my novella. And because I made some really good progress on Sunday. On Sunday, I sat down and I wrote like 3,000 words, you know? And then like yesterday, like I wrote 200. Like that's all I could like squeak out. But I was arguing with like Scrivener. I don't know what you write with. Are you a Google Docs user, Dabble, Scrivener? What do you
I
use?
use Microsoft Word, just very
Like
simple, very plain.
classic, nothing wrong with it. We all use different things. The only reason I don't use Word is because you have to pay for it. It has that
That's
like subscription. Um, so I was kind of arguing a little bit with Scrivener last night to like do what I wanted it to do. And I just lost all my steam. I was like threw my hands up and never really got around to writing anything. And it kind of brought down my mood a little bit and made me spiral a little bit, made me feel pretty low, like pretty crappy, I guess you could say. So what do you do in moments like that where it doesn't feel like that you're trying to move forward, but it's not really happening? Like you're trying to do the thing. Do you just like give yourself space for the day? Like what do you do?
I do, yeah. I try to be easy on myself. It's not easy living with this. So I try not to
Agree.
beat myself up over it. I tell myself it's okay to have bad days. You're going to get through it. Just take it easy for now and you can come back to it tomorrow, next week. It's still going to be there waiting for you.
It sounds like you're giving yourself a lot of grace.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to do that for sure.
I think that's really important. I have to remind myself that all the time. And I think that's probably one of the hardest things. I don't know if you struggle with this, but as a creative person, I tend to hold myself to really high standards for my creative output. almost, or like my creative ability. Like, and I have found that other creatives tend to do that. Like, we're the only ones holding us to this magical standard is ourselves, but we tend to. Do you feel like that affects you at all?
Sometimes, yeah, it's kind of like a self-contained prison where you put yourself in this and you have to meet all these goals that sometimes aren't realistic. So, like you said, you have to have grace. You have to be gentle with yourself and just give yourself some space.
I love how you compared it to like a self-contained prison. Like, the only one putting that on us is ourselves. And we can sometimes be our own worst enemy, you know? And that's a tough part of this process. But you're now juggling 10 books. That's a lot. They're all probably in various stages, right?
Yes, some of them have been edited, some of them are still waiting for editors, but yeah, they're all moving along, which is good.
How do you keep track of all of that? That seems like a lot of moving pieces.
It is. It can be tricky, but fortunately, I love working on different projects because sometimes I'll be in the mood to write fantasy. Sometimes I'm in the mood to write romance. So it's kind of exciting in that way where I feel like I'm not writing the same thing twice. You know, I'm always doing something different. So it comes naturally to me. I think juggling all of these.
Okay, okay. I love hearing that. I know for me, I can get a little anxious when I have multiple things that I'm juggling. Did that ever come up any where you might be like butting up against a deadline or something like that? Or one
Yes.
editor's asking for something and another's editor asking for something and
Yeah,
all of
no,
that?
I always try to be transparent and just be like, I have other book deals. I'll get to you as soon as I can. I promise. But yeah, no, sometimes it can be overwhelming for sure.
I think transparency and being honest, not only with yourself, but those around you is also a really important kind of like coping mechanism
Yeah,
because it
for
kind
sure.
of sets the stage for everyone. So everyone's on the same page, you know? I think that really, really helps. Do you feel like there are any particular resources for you in particular for, your depression, your anxiety that have been beneficial in helping to sort of manage, not only having depression, anxiety, but managing it alongside having a creative career?
I think so, yeah. I've been on Prozac for about a year and a half now, and that medication has helped me. I know it's not for everybody, but sometimes that can give you the edge that you need to leave the house if you've become housebound, to push through your panic
Mhm.
attacks. You know, and then other things I do, hang out with my cats and play video games and read books, lots of books. So, you know, just it's a combination of things I think that helps.
I love that. I also have a cat that just like slinked by in the background. My pets, and I have like my little dog right here.
Oh,
He helps a lot. So I definitely understand kind of leaning into the things that bring you comfort. I've also tried, various medications. I definitely think it's a personal thing. Some people, it works for some people, it doesn't work for other people. I don't think there's any sort of right way. I totally advocate for doing what fits for you. And I'm glad that you're finding, getting something beneficial out of that. I love that. I've heard people who are like almost scared to try.
I was in that position too of like, what if it makes me worse? What if I can't come back from it? But no, it was really gentle on my body. I started off on a really low dose. So if there were any side effects, I could stop it immediately. I've been pretty surprised with it. So yeah, it's been a
Good.
great help.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I'm really glad to hear that. So, what inspires you then to keep creating? Obviously, you're reading, you're a writer. Is it all the reading? Is it there? Yeah, is it like music? Is it TV shows? Like, especially when you're in a low. Like for me, I know when I'm in a low and I'm experiencing any kind of autistic burnout or I'm experiencing any kind of depression, the inspiration is finding inspiration is probably one of the hardest things for me personally. So, like, how do you find inspiration, even in the difficult time?
Yeah, for me, it comes from everywhere. It comes from books and TV shows and movies. Usually when I'm not expecting it, when I just sit down and I'm relaxing and I watch a TV show or a movie and I'm like, that's a great idea. I want to explore that. So it's really fun where you can find inspiration just about everywhere in your everyday life.
I totally agree. I have to keep a list, like a running list of like little ideas of things that I've seen in other places that I'm like, oh, I'd really like to take this little chunk and twist it, the good and the bad. I know for me, when I'm writing, I use my writing as a way to really explore things that I'm dealing with, whether it's my depression, my anxiety. I feel like all my characters in some way are dealing with some sort of depression or anxiety, you know? Um,
Do the same thing. I'll take my experiences, my anxiety, my depression, I'll put them into my characters and in fantasy worlds and show people that everybody can have anxiety, everybody can have depression, and this is what it looks like for all these different characters.
yeah, I agree. And I think it makes our stories more relatable. I
It
really
is, yeah.
do.
for sure.
you know? Because it gives your characters depth and, they're not just like sword wielding princesses or whatever they are,
The real
they
people.
have they're real people. Yeah, exactly. So, would you mind sharing a little bit like a story about a time where maybe your depression or anxiety did impact your creative journey or your creativeness, whether it was like a particular novel that you got hung up on or maybe like missing a deadline? Like, can you tell us like one little hardship that happened and like maybe how you overcame that?
Yeah, it was probably last year when my grandpa passed away, and the whole family was kind of shrouded in grief and anxiety, and it's a lot going on. I didn't write for a few months, and I really needed to take the time to kind of digest everything that was going on and deal with my own anxiety. And I started the medication, and it was slowly I got back to writing books. But yeah, no, there's been a lot of challenges, but I kept going, and I'm still writing, still doing it.
Yeah, I see that. I definitely see that. I think that's admirable. And that's why I wanted to speak with you and bring you on. I think there's a lot to be said for keep going, even when things are really dark and heavy. So definitely be proud of yourself. Be proud of your journey of what you're continuing to accomplish. How important to you has community been in your journey? And I mean like community, not just like your family, but like creative community. Have you reached out at all or made friends within the creative community to kind of keep you going? Has that been a part of your process at all?
It definitely has, yeah. I have lots of writer friends that I can message and we can talk about. A lot of them actually have anxiety and depression, so we can talk about mental health. We can talk about our books, and it's just helpful to have somebody who understands, who's also in the publishing industry and knows all of the demands that come with it and the toll that it can take on your mental health. So it's been really good for my mental health as well.
I agree. I don't think that unless you've, for example, like the trenches, until you've been in the trenches, I don't think you understand what that feels like.
It is
Um,
scary. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like, it's not just scary, but it is, it can be demoralizing, And if you're someone who struggles with depression, it can worsen those symptoms. I know for me, it's kind of been that way where I'll get like 3 rejections in a day, and so I'm like, scooping down, but then I'm like getting beta reader feedback on another project, and it's like, "This is amazing," and then as you're like right back up. It's a very crazy journey. It's very, very hard.
It's a roller coaster. It's like one day you're up, next day you're down. It's all over the place.
I agree. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. And I think it makes us pretty tough to not only go through the creative journey, but to be dealing with it with things, like anxiety and depression. That makes it harder for us. There's an extra layer of challenge, that we're dealing with and we're facing. So if you had to tell people in your life, like one thing on how they could best support you or support someone with anxiety or depression or panic attack, what would you tell them?
I would tell them just to listen. I think that's been really helpful, just having someone you can talk to. For me, it's my mom. I always go to her when I'm having a bad day and she just listens. She doesn't interrupt. She doesn't interject. She doesn't try to put her own opinion on it. She just sits there and quietly listens. And I think that's really important when you're going through something. You don't really want someone else to chime in or someone to give you advice. It's like just listen. Just listen to what I'm saying.
When someone sits and listens, it can be
Yeah.
so validating and so healing,
Yeah.
you know? I feel like a lot of people struggle with that understanding that sometimes we're not looking for a solution.
Exactly. We just want to vent. We just want to talk. And so yeah, it's helpful when they just listen.
Yeah, I know I've had to take to like trying to be like when I'm talking to like especially my partner being like, I don't need advice. I just need you to listen, like prefacing.
That's a good idea, yeah, it works.
Yeah, it does work. It does work. But then that you have to advocate for yourself in that moment. And sometimes when you're either like you're heated or you're really low, it can get hard to advocate for yourself.
Sure.
It can be hard to remember to do those things. So um I love that. I love that you have someone to lean on. I think that's really, really important. I think encouraging the people in our lives to just listen when we're going through a hard time is very, very valuable. So I would love to know a little bit about what keeps you motivated. Obviously, you've written 10 books, so it seems like you have plenty of that. You have that in spades, like buckets full, you know? Where does that come from?
That's a good question. I've wondered that my whole life. I've always just had this drive to tell stories, and it's just maybe it's come from my anxiety, my depression, using that as a comfort. But yeah, I've always just wanted to be a prolific author and see how many stories I can write and how many people's lives I can touch and connect with my books.
At what age did you decide you wanted to be an author?
I think I was about 5 or 6 years old. I was really young.
Same, same. I remember being in, like, 1st grade and telling everyone, like, "I wanna be an author," and I was reading what were you reading, like, when you were, like, 1st, 2nd grade? Do you remember?
I think I was reading a lot of Nancy Drew. I think I was
I
reading.
or, like, Judy Blume. I was reading a
Yeah,
lot of Judy Blume, and it was like Judy Blume was like, "If she's doing this, these are so good, like, that's what I wanna do."
exactly. Yeah, I remember telling all my teachers, "I'm gonna be a writer. It's decided."
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And when you were in school, did that kinda get acknowledged, like, especially in high school when you had specific English teachers, did that get acknowledged where you're like, "Oh, you're a really good writer." Did you
and I
get that
always did
feedback?
really well on exams and stuff. Not so good with math or science, but English was my best subject. And yeah, I had lots of teachers saying, "No, you should pursue this professionally." So I'm glad I
I love
listened to
that.
that.
Yeah, I love that, and those are also, like, teams that people on your team, like, who are supporting you. I love that. I had a very, very similar journey, you know? I remember being in middle school and, like, scribbling, like, poetry in my math journal instead of, like, paying attention. You could have stopped me from writing something. I was always writing.
Same with me. Yeah. So it was nice to have teachers that saw that and kind of nurtured that potential instead of shooting it down.
Well, out of all your projects, which one are you most excited about right now?
Oh, gosh, I really do love them all equally. But the one I just signed this morning is a murder mystery set in 1920s New York. So I am really excited to see where that goes.
I love the time period. It's so, like, romantic in a way. The girls with little dresses, is it the flappers? Is that what they're
Yes.
called?
Thanks. And that
And
was really fun to write.
okay, alright, I love that. I love that so much. So what about future goals, future projects? Is it all just writing? Is that the only goal right now, or do you have other little projects, irons in the fire?
Yeah, I mean, writing more books, that's always the number one goal, reading more books, that closely follows it. Maybe doing a book signing, I've never done that before. So, like, yeah, just little steps that it kind of makes you feel more like a real author.
I get that, I definitely get that. So what book have you read recently that you love?
I read a lot of books recently. I kind of went back to the Percy Jackson series. That's always
Okay,
been fun.
classic.
Yeah. And I also love the Vampire Academy series by Rochelle Mead. Those are really great books. And rereading old.
Never Yeah, going back to, like, classics,
Oh yeah.
things you grew up with. I never read Vampire Academy, and, were those turned into a TV show, or is that Vampire Diaries?
No, that was the Vampire Diaries, but I think they made it into a movie and then a TV show. I'm not sure if it did well, but I think I do remember seeing it on TV.
I'll have to look it up because 'cause I'm a big proponent of vampires, like, anything with vampires. I just my last book had, like, a vampire in it. It's like a murder mystery set in Appalachia with vampires, you know?
Oh, that's so cool.
So I'll have to go check it out. Alright. And then in terms of, like, going back to the conversation about mental health, like, the creative industry as a whole, what would you like to see from the creative industry as a whole in terms of, like, inclusivity or support for people who are, dealing with mental illness or neurodivergence? Is there something that you would like to see develop within the industry?
Yeah, I think more opportunities would be nice for people with mental health challenges and more acknowledgement, I think, from agents and publishers that this is a really difficult industry. And especially if you have mental health, it's hard to break in, it's hard to find motivation to keep going. So just to kind of have that validation, I think would be helpful.
I agree, especially when we have things that happened. Like, I don't know if you heard, I'm sure you did. You're on Threads, just like I'm on Threads, and I feel like all the book trauma is on Threads.
Oh, yes.
I don't know if you heard about the agent who posted on Twitter about the she, like, received a query from somebody, and then she went to Twitter and asked the Twitterverse to write this book instead.
Yeah, I did hear about that. I was like, that's not great. That must have been
No,
really well for that writer.
I remember reading that, and it got me feeling pretty low that day because 'cause I'm in the middle of querying, you know? And so I feel like that, one, acknowledging that it's difficult, but also realizing that there are these other crazy things happening in the publishing world has a huge impact on the overall mental health of people going through this creative journey, especially when trying to enter into traditional publishing. It feels like there's speed bump after speed bump, like roadblock after roadblock. So I agree that a little bit of acknowledgement might go a long way, for people. I
For
really,
sure.
really do. It can be hard. It can be
It
really, really.
it's really taxing on your mental health for sure.
I know for me that I've gone like I'll go like 2 or 3 weeks without receiving anything from anyone, and then it's like all in one day, I'm like 3 or 4 rejections, and I'm like, "Why did the stars align that they all dumped me at once?" It's like,
Yes, that's sometimes I'm not sure which is worse, like getting tons of rejections or just radio silence. I'm
I
like, don't know what's going on at all.
they're 2 different spectrum. Because I don't know, I feel like if I'm not hearing anything, I'm almost, like, delusional, like, "Oh, maybe this means something. Maybe, like, they like my work. Like, maybe I'm in a maybe pile."
Yeah, you start overanalyzing it, reading into it. There's a lot of layers to it for sure.
So, please tell us where can, listeners find you?
Yeah, so I'm on pretty much all social media at Dana Gricken and also danagricken.com. And you can come there and check out my book, send me a message, whether it's about mental health or about writing books. Or even I've had a lot of authors reach out and ask me, what publishers should I submit to?
I remember, your post about small publishers. You made a specific post on Threads, and it was kind of the one that got me thinking about submitting to small publishers. And I went on this whole week-long journey of looking up small publishers and like digging into Query Tracker and all of that and finding some that I felt like would match, my work and what I was doing. So I really appreciate that. You're really open on your page about your journey, even talking about like your anxiety and depression. You're always talking about it, that even in the face of that darkness, you're still here and you're always encouraging everyone to keep going. And I love that about you. It's one of the big reasons I asked you to come on, but I love that positivity. I think we need that, especially for those of us who might be struggling, you know?
That's why I do it, just to hopefully reach someone who is considering giving up. Maybe this is the sign that says, hey, keep going. I'm rooting for you.
I love that. So what's like one thing that your readers or fellow writers on the internet wouldn't know about you? Something weird, something quirky, something you haven't shared yet?
We might know it. I'm actually a huge Star Trek fan. I don't know if you can see my calendar back there, but yeah, that is
I can now, yeah. Your head was in front of it most of the
yeah,
time.
huge astronomy nerd. You kind of see my Earth painting there. So yeah, big nerd.
Digging. That's surprising. Have you not written any sci-fi?
I have, yes. I've written a sci-fi novella and I self-published that this year. I have a few books that I've been querying in sci-fi. So hopefully I'll get to publish those. And yeah, and I take a lot of inspiration from Star Trek. So hopefully one day.
You love it. And where can they find this book, the self-published one?
That is on everywhere, actually. Amazon, iBooks. It's called Drifting Darkly. So yeah, I think it's only like $6 for the novella. So it's pretty cheap.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I'll definitely go check it out. I didn't know that you had self-published anything. I thought you were just doing you had just had all these book deals. So I'll definitely have to go grab that and get, a taste of your writing. I'm a sci-fi fan myself. I read pretty widely. Um, Sci-fi, fantasy. I'm not much of a horror person. At least I said I wasn't a horror person, and then I read this Substack about horror, and then they were, like, listing all these horror books or short stories. I was like, "I've read that one, I've read that one, I've read that." And it's like, apparently I do like horror. I think I'm more of a thriller person, really.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, I
I
love
like
a good thriller too.
I do too, I do too. Thriller is so much fun. I feel like I like the surprises.
Exactly. Yeah. Of like turning the page and you don't know what's going to happen. Is this character going to survive? What's going to happen next? Yeah. That's really fun.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for being here today, Dana. I do appreciate it, taking some time out of your day to speak with me. I'm really, really excited to, share our talk with everyone. And I'll be sure to include all of your information, like in the show notes and all of that, so people can reach out to you. And I encourage everyone who's listening to do so. Dana is so welcoming, so kind. She responds to messages. Go follow her. She's a light in the dark. So I definitely encourage everyone to do that. So thank you for being here today, Dana. And I hope, take care. Have a good one.
You too. Thank you.
All right.